Well, and it's interesting because one of the things that you're talking about is something that I've been talking about. Not only have I been looking at this in my own business, but I've been talking to my clients about this. You cannot solve a problem in your business at the level the problem is happening. The problem is an effect. The problem is in effect. So by comparison, in the business and the entrepreneurial world, if you're not getting the sales that you want, you don't have any sales, you can't just hit the people in your pipeline harder, hoping to close them faster. That doesn't solve the problem. You have to go the step before, the 2 steps before, to see what is the cause that is creating this effect. And you're talking about the same thing, but just in the economy, right? You cannot solve the problem of consumption at the point of consumption. Hi, I'm Erin Marcus, former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. And this is going to be fun because, you know how they're always saying it's a small world. It's a small world. It's a small world. Well, Brandon and I are having this conversation this morning as we're getting to know each other and prepping for this conversation. And what do we realize? In this giant city of Chicago, my brother used to go to your coffee shop. Like, he is still texting me who he knows from there, how often he's there. He's still going there. The new owners moved it. Such a small world. And as we were discussing, what you do in your business right now is very much in my frame of reference from what I used to work on in corporate. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Before we get into it, why don't you give everybody a more formal introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Erin, first off, like I said, I was doing some research and I was like, we have how many friends in common? Like 35 friends in common.
Why don't we know each other?
And I don't live in Chicago anymore. I live in Ohio. And so I was like, all right, 35 people. Who are these people and how do I know them? And then we, again, in the pre-conversation, just chatting and saying what I do with the coffee shop, used to, and come to find out your brother goes next door to our shop all the time, old shop. So anyway,
his kids go to school right down the block from where your shop was, and he's a big coffee person. So
I probably served him coffee many times in my former life.
There you go.
And so a little bit about me is my wife and I are business owners together. We both are activists. So we started the coffee shop because we wanted to change the world, make a difference in the South Loop of Chicago, while also impacting coffee farmers. So we started that. We did not have any rich relatives. We did not know a lot about money. We were idealistic entrepreneurs who thought anything could happen and it'll be easy and we'll make a lot of money because everybody loves coffee. But
what could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? And the thing is everything possibly went wrong in business, and you have to be a little bit of idealistic to get in the first place.
I want to back up for 1 second as you say that. What did you do before? Do you guys have a job background, or were you always entrepreneurs?
No, I was in IT, working downtown Chicago, and then my wife was a grant writer for a nonprofit. And then we took the plunge to start this brick and mortar business, which was a big pay cut for us, for sure. And one of the things I learned was we are last to get paid all the time. Tips from the tip jar. That's how I ate sometimes. And people are like, yeah, but you love it. I'm like, but
I'd love to have a good meal.
Yeah. So fast forward 7 years later, we we had a flood in the business, literally the
wow.
roof was off, and a freak storm happened, flood happened. This was nuts. Literally, my staff's calling me saying, the store's falling apart. You need to come here
Like
right now.
physically,
And
not
I was
just
like, yeah,
metaphorically.
yeah, I was like, yeah, he's being a little dramatic. But then I saw the video and I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And luckily we had some contingency capital in
Mhm.
place in case something happened, which was super important because at that point in time, we found out that we were, well, we didn't know until a month or two later, but during the flood, my wife was 2 months pregnant.
Oh,
She didn't,
wow.
she didn't know.
She just thought it was stress, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All those crazy physical feelings and not feeling well, clearly
yeah,
stress. I mean, it would make sense.
of course, of course. So then,
Wow.
then we find out and we're like, well, now we have a baby coming. We can't do the things of entrepreneurship like we did
Well,
previously.
especially when you have a brick and mortar and a coffee shop, you were
Yeah.
there 24/7, I imagine,
Oh yeah.
right?
Quite regularly.
Yeah.
I learned through some of the pains to at least have some downtime
Mhm.
and make sure I'm taking care of myself, which a lot of business owners don't do that.
No, and if you don't do it proactively, it will happen either way. You can just do it on your terms or wait until you crash.
Yeah,
But
it'll kill you, like literally,
literally.
and it almost did kill me, which I might get into. But then after that, I had learned about this concept of infinite banking. Did not know that it was a divisive topic. Infinite banking. I just knew it was super helpful for me as a business owner to have access to capital and to protect my biggest asset, me,
Mhm.
and my wife, because if something happened to one of us, we're sunk, right?
Right.
So this concept made sense for us as business owners, and then we sold the business, and my mentor, between selling the business, I asked if I could work for him, and he said, no. And I was like, what do you mean no? I like this. I keep sending you clients. And he's like, no, you're too entrepreneurial. I don't think this is going to work out. I was
Interesting.
like, okay, thanks. But no, now what am I going to do? I'm going to go get a job, I guess, because I have a baby coming.
Baby.
What do I do? And that was hard to start thinking, go get a job and you're an entrepreneur, business owner. Then he comes back to me a few months later and says, I have an idea. How about you and your wife do this together? And I'll train you and you guys create your own agency. I was like, that sounds good, because my wife's not going to be able to get a job. No one's going to hire a 7-month
Right. You can't
pregnant
exactly
woman.
hide it at that point, right?
Yeah. So we ended up starting our new business, which we at the time called it Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. The tagline was, sometimes intelligence skips a generation.
I love it.
Because it was all about saving versus investing, like building stable foundations. And if you look at our world right now, our world is not very stable. It's very chaotic. And I think it was by design, sometimes, and saying, okay, how do I help build stability for people? And that's where Grandma's Wealth Wisdom came. We've now,
And I have to say, one of the things I love about that is, so I know that one of the things that you know about and practice is profit first, this concept of profit first, which from my very basic understanding is buckets, right? Accounts, different buckets, different accounts for different buckets. And when I started babysitting at maybe 10 or 11 years old, which is an entirely different topic, that at 10 years old, I was in charge of other people's toddlers, like, yay for the 70s, right? But that's what my grandmother taught me to do. I had envelopes. I had envelopes in my drawer, and they were labeled. And as I would come home from babysitting with my $3 or whatever it was, I would put those dollars in different envelopes. And one was for savings and one was for spending. And as I got older, because I'm of the age where I was well post college when electronic banking and ATMs came out. But as I got older, and even once I turned 16 and would get a paycheck, and then you go to the currency exchange and cash your paycheck. And I was 17, 18 years old and still using my envelopes. The names on the envelopes got fancier because now it was car insurance, not candy. But it was still the same concept.
Yeah. And I think that, again, what happened and this is, again, going into some of the financial foundations. We became, what do you call it? Back in the day, grandma's generation, we were savers, right? Then we became more spenders, and we became where the market changed, right? It was all about consumption. Like that's what is shown as success in the S&P 500. How much are we consuming? And from a health standpoint, this is again why I think we're in a really bad place. And this is something I don't know if you're into health or any of that stuff, but if you keep eating, you're gonna get fat, right? If you keep eating and eating and eating and eating and growing, you can only consume so much, right?
Right. Yes, before it's a problem. Absolutely.
And then if you eat a lot, they'll just put you on some medications and tell you, here's the medication, take this and you'll be okay, right? When we don't look back and say, well, how did I get here? You know what I need to do is lower my intake of food and go to the gym.
Right. And choose wisely over what you're putting in your body.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, the economy is almost the same way, right? And we do the exact same things. And then we say, well, if we lower the interest rate or increase the interest rate, that'll solve the problem. Whereas it's
entirely reactive, right? It's entirely reactive. Well, and it's interesting because one of the things that you're talking about is something that I've been talking about. Not only have I been looking at this in my own business, but I've been talking to my clients about this. You cannot solve a problem in your business at the level the problem is happening. The problem is an effect. The problem is in effect. So by comparison, in the business and the entrepreneurial world, if you're not getting the sales that you want, you don't have any sales, you can't just hit the people in your pipeline harder, hoping to close them faster. That doesn't solve the problem. You have to go the step before, the 2 steps before, to see what is the cause that is creating this effect. And you're talking about the same thing, but just in the economy, right? You cannot solve the problem of consumption at the point of consumption.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the hardest part as business owners, or even content creators and all that. We're all reactive, right? And we want quick fixes, that dopamine effect and all that other stuff. And
well, we were taught this.
Yeah.
So I'm 52 years old, right? So the 70s, we didn't have this as much, but by the end of the 80s and definitely in the 90s and later, instant gratification because of technology just became a thing. And now it's not just because we want it, it's because our brains think something's wrong if we don't get it. We're defining the lack of instant success as a failure. So how are you supposed to fight, right? So, I mean, if you look at that, if you look at not just, well, you just shouldn't want it, you shouldn't spend, that's like kind of a pat answer, right? That doesn't solve it, because our brains have literally been trained to tell us there's something wrong if things aren't perfect and happen instantly. And that's the pattern to break.
Well, and I think I'm going to put on my screen, my Zoom background, because I want to show you this logo that we've
Oh,
created.
nice.
So, and the reason I did this is most people's financial foundations and business foundations are upside down, right? They have the little things on the bottom trying to make that bigger, where they don't build the solid foundation, right?
Yeah.
They don't build the main big rock at the bottom to then be able to build up, right? And the reason is, I think, that building a solid foundation takes time, and it takes effort. It takes reflection and asking yourself those questions deeper, deeper, deeper to
Yes.
build the foundation. Now we want quick fixes. So you'll notice if you're building a house, sometimes that foundation work takes forever. You're like, man, are these guys actually working?
Right. When's the house? Where is it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you drive by and you're like, oh, wow, the house is there. When did the house come from? Because they focused on the foundation and then everything else built up.
Love what you're learning here and interested in more? Check out conqueryourbusiness.com to get immediate access to all sorts of additional resources and stay updated on our upcoming training events. So in your work with clients, I'm curious, because of this parallel that now seems monumentally obvious, right? Because of this parallel, I know what I do with my clients when they're frustrated that they're not getting quick wins. How do you help somebody in the just on the money side of things to change their mindset to be able to handle going against the grain, going against everything TV's telling you, going against everything Facebook's telling you, going against everything TMZ is telling you, or whatever it is you're getting your information?
I mean, I think that's the hardest thing, and why probably it's really hard for us to grow our YouTube channel and podcast and everything, because I'm not going to tell you, if you just click on this, you're going to get XYZ. And then, and I think that it does require delayed gratification, right?
Which is hard for humans and has only gotten harder.
Well, and also we look at some of our parents and we say, this immediate gratification that you wanted, now they're going to be paying the price, right? That's why retirements and some of that stuff is like, oh yeah, because they didn't build the foundation. They did not save. And what you have to do is reverse engineer. That's why I love Profit First and building Profit First system into my regular rhythms of life, right? So we have rhythms about how we look at our money. We call it the still method, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we do the still method regularly, and we have Profit First, right? That's part of the still method. Now, in the Profit First system, there's a 5% goes to profit, right? And then a quarter of that or half of that will go to me as the owner as a profit distribution to me. The rest goes to there. So then I at least get to get something every quarter because of my work, right? I see the efforts.
Well, and there's something true about paying yourself something, even if it starts out small, because if you're always paying yourself last with what's ever quote unquote left over, it's an odd twist on a scarcity mindset. It's an odd twist. Like, there's never anything left over for me is the story that gets created.
Yep.
Which is the opposite of an abundance mindset, but kind of buried, right? It's not as blatant as, because you think you're making all these reinvestments and everything, but if you treat yourself as the leftover piece, you start
exactly. And that's the way we've been conditioned, right? Even as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're the backbone of the economy, right? Supposedly.
that we
But
keep
yeah,
hearing.
it doesn't really get us the results we want. And then we wonder, oh, I'm burnt out and this business didn't serve me. And that's why I left the coffee shop thing, because again, some of the things I was like, I have a child now. I can't do those things. I need to make a different
Well, and
decision.
part of the challenge, and we started this bit of this conversation before we hit record, but one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again between people who have money versus people who don't, or successful business owners versus non-successful business owners, is access to information. And I watch so many entrepreneurs and small business owners think that, for example, I'm a great photographer, so I'll just have a photography business.
Yeah, right.
Except you've put all your time and money and effort into learning how to be a good photographer. You've put zero time and money effort into learning how to run a business, but that's
Yep.
just supposed, and then you get mad at yourself and feel like a failure when that just doesn't inherently happen.
Yeah.
And it's the same, right? It's like all of these business owners who have zero experience and knowledge doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them stupid, just makes them not having the experience.
Yeah.
But they don't want to invest the time, the money, the effort into being a good business owner. They just want to do the thing that the business does.
And I've heard people tell me, business owners, well, I don't like numbers, so I'm just not going to do that. And I'm like, well, you should.
I don't right.
And you've probably heard that before, and you're like, and that's part of the CFO role that we say, well, when I get big enough, then.
Right. But you won't get big enough to need it if you don't look at it now.
Yeah. It's kind of like the exercise, we don't do the healthy habits to be able to be in the place to be able to, when I'm big enough, I don't know, whatever it is. I'm not a bodybuilder, but I do go to the gym regularly. So those habits are helpful. And so like the Profit First system is building those envelopes in place that are, owners pay, OpEx, taxes. You'd be surprised how many business owners forget that they owe taxes.
Well, they're running on such lean budgets that it's not even a forget, it's a wish it would go away.
Yeah, which is not good.
Doesn't work. We've
so
tried. Welcome to the state of Illinois. It's not going away.
Exactly. That's why one of the reasons I moved to Ohio, by the way. Yes. And
I
then
call
profit,
it the business. I call Illinois the business prevention state.
Oh, that's why. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. God bless them. But like you build that system and you make sure that you get paid first and you run your OpEx, your business, and on a margin, right? 30% as opposed to 150%. Right. And the way I think about it a lot, if you don't have a plan for your money, everybody else does. Like when we're in business, we're trying to get people's money, right? And say, we're bigger. This is why I provide value and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Whatever the exchange is.
Yeah.
And so a question for you. Yep. So for the people who haven't done it yet, right? Because 99% of the people I talk to are doing it, I won't say the wrong way, the default way, where they're putting themselves last. And they're running a business on a shoestring, but on a very, very tight budget. What would you give to people as advice for starting? Like, to me, that doesn't get turned around in a day.
Yeah.
You can't go from running your business on 110% OpEx to 60%. It really doesn't. You'd have to okay, let me fire half my team. Let me, most of the time the debt people are carrying would make that impossible anyway. But where do you suggest people start if this is starting to make sense to them?
Well, the first thing, of course, I'll give a plug to my community that we have. and it's wealthwisdom.mn.co. It's a small community, right? But it's talking about the financial side of the business, right? Building those pieces. So my wife is a regular content creator. She is right now creating a course on YNAB. You need a budget, using that system to help the entrepreneur business owner build the rhythms, right? And so being in community of other people who are trying to build the rhythms is going to help you, that
I
your
agree.
tribe, right?
Absolutely.
So that's something we've thought about, as saying, okay, everybody feels siloed. Being a learner, like listening to YouTube's podcasts, whatever, and not just the Dave Ramsey stuff, right? And saying, okay, I'm going to listen to Grandpa or whoever. They have a different mindset than, or if you're self-employed, you probably need to listen to people who are in that industry or
Right.
in that, as opposed to somebody else who's saying, well, take the company match, right?
Right.
I'm in a
different.
small group. I'm in a men's small group, and I was like, yeah, I have different challenges than your company match thing, because I am the company match,
Right. Paying on both sides. Right.
yeah. So you have to find your right tribe. So finding that, so be a part of the community and make the adjustments. So little adjustments.
Yes.
You don't conquer Mount Everest.
Your
just
first
because
time
you,
out, right?
yeah, you train for it. So those are things I think that
I love that idea. And I think that's one of the reasons, our brains think very much all or nothing.
Mhm.
And that's scary. If you were to say to me, okay, I want you to pay yourself first and run your operations on no more than 70% of your gross. And I'm looking at my numbers, if I'm even willing to do that, even if I'm not willing to do that, I have the gut feeling that I'm not only short every month, I'm tapping in a credit. So I already know I need 110%. And if you're going to tell me pay myself first, I'm going to look and say, no way. So I absolutely agree. It's small steps to build the momentum and turn it all around.
And if you're building a business, you want to eventually have a business that not just you love, but loves you back.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's an important thing of why are you in the business. I've told people, you know what you need to do? Just stop. Like, I feel like I'm Gordon Ramsay, just saying, shut it down. Like literally, I'm like, just shut it down. And it's stupid. And I can't do that, but I want to. And I think that's a hard part, and knowing that the things we think we know may not be so, right? I forget who said that, but it's an old statement. And that's part of the infinite banking strategy that I think about and use, because people are like, oh, life insurance, it's a horrible investment. I'm like, well, it's not an investment. It's my savings that I'm using to be able to do things in my business. Because I used my policy when I was saving for this thing. I used my policy to get out of high interest debt that I started with the coffee shop. Used my policy to go to Ireland.
Oh, wow. It's a leveraging tool, and people don't know that about, and again, going back to what we were chatting about before, when I was immersed in the financial services world, the thing that became obvious to me was the difference between people who have money and don't have money is not access to products, but it's access to the information on how to use the product, right? They don't realize, they only know the default definition and the three main things that are out there, right? Health insurance, property and casualty, and they know what life insurance is, or they think they know. But they don't understand that life insurance is a financial tool, not a healthcare tool. And that you can use it that way.
Yeah, it's all about leverage and finding the right people who understand it. And I look at me as a safe money specialist. I'm not going to tell you what to risk in, what stocks to buy. I don't really even want to play in that game. But I will tell you, as a cash flow management specialist and a profit first certified specialist, and why I love working with business owners, you are your greatest asset. You want to protect that asset, 100%. You'd rather, and as a business owner, you'd rather own it than rent it, right? So that's why whole life is important, right? And then having access to capital, so that way when the opportunities happen, or the not so good opportunities happen, not opportunities,
the emergencies happen, right?
Exactly. Like a flood that I used my policy for. Literally, flood happened. I'm like, well, bills are still coming. I need to take a loan, short-term loan. Banks will give you the money at a cost, right? And they'll say, oh, sure, here you go, 20%. Well, we have to, again, what I think a lot about is don't do what the banks tell you to do what the banks do.
Yes.
Why are they the most profitable business in the world? We are all in the banking business, no matter what. And you look as a business owner and you realize there's two people I'm paying regularly, and that's the financing, right? And credit card fees, right? If you have a membership site, Apple gets a ton, right? And Uncle Sam. I swear to God, whenever I had this shop, I was like, all right, this guy never shows up, the tax guy. And
especially because you were in the city.
Yes. And then I had a customer yell at me because of peer tax, and they're like, I demand you not to pay this, or that this needs to change. I was like, you need to talk to your
alderman.
Alderman, because I have no power. I wish I could. And the other thing is, they're like, well, why are you paying food tax or whatever, any of this? And why is the grocery store not have that? I'm like, well, they are.
It's a different
built differently, and and anyway, taxes was a big thing. So we have to think about this and be around people who are questioning those things. That's why I love the membership community. That's why I love working with business owners, and why even as I build this infinite banking thing, there's a lot of misinformation out there. But how do I educate the common person? Now here's the fun, crazy thing. The reason that people go after the rich and all that is because there's bigger premiums, right? Bigger amounts of money.
Right.
The way we're going to change the world is from the ground up. And so I want to educate business owners, and I want to see them thrive, because majority of businesses fail. It's not because of not passion. It's because
it's not because they didn't work hard. It's not because the people didn't work hard. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we wrote a special report, and I'll just end with this. It is, what do they call it? 5 steps to secure your financial future outside of W-2.
Nice.
And we thought a lot about this is because I shouldn't have to sacrifice my future for, for business, right? Or whatever.
Right.
So how do I build that?
So if people want to continue this conversation with you and learn more about this, because I think there's just such a breadth of information available that people, one, don't know is available, but two, it's not big, scary changes. We're not telling you throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're not even saying most of the time, we're not even saying you're not allowed to spend any money until you, like, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that hard. But if you don't start it, it never gets there. So
that's why I don't like the whole, like, don't drink lattes thing. I used to own a coffee shop. If everybody did that, that would
have been out of business, right?
Yeah.
It's not about deprivation.
Yeah. So do what you love, but in moderation. So,
so what's the best way for people to reach out to you and continue this conversation, get a copy of that report, start turning their ship around, all of the things?
Yeah. So you can find me on podcast, YouTube. If you look up, just Google Wealth Wisdom Financial, You will find us if you go on YouTube, type in Wealth Wisdom Financial, subscribe there. If you go to the podcast thing, you'll do the same thing through Apple, Wealth Wisdom Financial. And then if you go to Wealth Wisdom FP, that's financialpartners.com, you will see our whole website. And if you want this special report that we've created, do www.wealthwisdomfp.com/ it's going to be a hard one, report.
Perfect.
wealthwisdomfp.com/report, and you're going to be able to download that special report, and you really want to get that and just implement those small things, small 1% adjustments.
Well,
I didn't even get into the still method.
You don't even have to get into the hard part, right? So thank you for sharing all that information. And I think that's one of the things I want people to know is if they're intrigued about this at all, if they feel like they're paying themselves last and paying themselves with whatever's left over, if something's left over, you're basically providing step-by-step tools to turn that around. And you've been there, right? You come out of corporate, you had the coffee shop, you've been there, so you totally get it. So that's awesome. And I do thank you for sharing your story and sharing your time and sharing your report and all of the things, because I know there's a lot of information to be gleaned there. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Erin. And I'm glad we have like so many friends in common.
I know. This is awesome.